should take that off, I guess. All right, you guys ready? I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Natrona County Planning and Zoning Commission for August 10th, 2021. Would you all please rise and let's have a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So for starters, we'll have introductions. To the far right of me is going to be the staff tonight for the Natrona County Planning and Zoning Board, and that's also County Attorney Eric Nelson. My name's Hal Hutchinson, by the way. I'm the chair. To my second over right is Board Member Jason Gutierrez. Next to me here on the right is Board Member Robert Grant. My far left is Board Member Matt Mitchell, and my immediate left is Board Member Chad Zeal. So wanted to make everyone aware that the actions that we take tonight will be forwarded to the Natrona County Commissioners, and they will consider what we recommend to them at their board meeting on September 7th, 2021. All right, so the first item of business, actually the second, according to our agenda, is approval or consideration of the July 14, 2021 meeting minutes and the October 13, 2020 meeting minutes. The chair would entertain a motion.
I move to accept those minutes as written.
I would second that motion.
We have a motion and a second for approval of both. Any discussion? I actually have one point that I'd like to make for the July 14th meeting. It makes reference in item number 5 to nothing more than ZC 21006 with no reference of where it was or whatnot. So my suggested revision of that would be to add concerning the landmark industrial park. And furthermore, on item 6, again, it just makes reference to the planning and zoning number without any reference to location. So that location generally concerns the B.B. Brooks area, north of Soda Lake, and the Casper Valefill, and east of Hartford Field. Okay. Are there any more discussion? All those in favor of approval of both sets of minutes as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. So our first item tonight has to do with Conditional Use Permit 21-004, and that has to do with a request for a 4-spot camping area and a mobile home for storage And that location is off Inberg Road. So could we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, my name is Eric Nelson, the county attorney. I'll be filling in for the planning department tonight. Ms. Wilhelm is out today and wasn't able to make the meeting. So I'll be presenting her presentation here today. As you mentioned, Mr. Chair, this is CUP 21-004. It's a conditional use permit application from Byron Coffee for a 4-spot camping area and a mobile home for storage. The proposal as submitted by the applicant would allow a maximum of 8 people per site. They would not allow fires, smoking, or fireworks. Waste disposal would not be available to visitors, nor would any water hookups. They would implement pet and quiet time policies. Parking would be limited to designated spots with a maximum of 2 vehicles per site and restrictions of 1 RV or 1 tent per site. Visitors would be required to stay within the park's boundaries, of which would be marked. Here on this aerial photograph, you can see the parcel that would be subject to the conditional use permit application is outlined in kind of a reddish purple color. And here's again indicating the parcel that is subject to the application is just off of Ingberg Road, north of US Highway 2026, south of Ingberg Road. This is showing the zoning in the area. It's it looks like urban ag, UA, is consistent with all of the zoning in the area. And here's a picture of the subject property, center of north side, facing south. Just another photograph, middle of the property facing east. Again, middle of the property facing west. And the middle of the lot facing north, showing stored trailers. So on a conditional use permit, approval and denial criteria. So the permit will not overburden county services. The permit will not cause issues pertaining to traffic, parking, or population density. Believe that staff looking at recommending denial due to the fact that the permit issuance could cause environmental hazards. No provision for the disposal of waste from the 4 spots, I believe, was made. The permit issuance could impact the character of the neighborhood and could, because of the environmental concerns, negatively impact public health, safety, and welfare. So going further into those 3 negative impacts, in not providing visitors with waste disposal options, this could become an environmental hazard. This location has had prior issues with visitors dumping their sewage onto the terrain, as stated by neighbors to staff. Approval of the 4 sites could alter the characteristics of the neighborhood. And again, concern for the environmental hazards caused by potential waste. We have received comments from neighbors expressing concerns regarding fire danger, noise levels, and trespassings. The neighbors do not object to the utilization of the mobile home for storage. The Natrona County Fire Marshal and the Health Department were contacted and have no concerns regarding the conditional use permit. Proposed findings of fact: the Natrona County's Health Department does not regulate campgrounds with 4 spots or less. At 5 spots, regulations would be implemented regarding trash bins, toilet facilities, water, and campsite dimensions. Within the zoning resolution, the development plan, there are no regulations against the implementation of a 4-site campground, but it states that campgrounds are only to be operated by Natrona County. Again, you all may recall that definitionally we've had some past issues with the campground definition. Staff is recommending denial based on the possibility of environmental hazards and possible harm to public health from lack of sewer waste disposal options on the site. And that's just a map, and I think that concludes the presentation from staff. I'd be happy to attempt to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Any questions for Eric? Eric, I did have one question. One of those pictures shows a picnic table and a porta potty, and is this currently being used as a campground, or how did?
Mr. Chairman, I can't answer that. If the applicant's here, I believe that they would be the best situated to speak to the current use of the property.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, we'd like to have the applicant come forward and state his case for this conditional use permit application. Here's her case, I should say. Hello.
Hello.
Hello,
Could you please give us your name and address, please? Name and addresses.
I'm Byron Coffey.
And I'm Amber Coffey. And our address 12360 Ingberg Road, Casper, Wyoming, 82604.
At this point is where you get to basically tell the board and anyone else in the audience what your plan is and anything we should know about your application.
Okay. Basically, we did not know that we had to have any kind of permit. We did, during the eclipse, we did get a permit for camping in this same area. We had over 100 spots filled. We had over 400 people there for the eclipse, and everything went smoothly and worked very well. And we found a website that just goes so that you can just put on advertised camping spots, and we thought it was kind of cool, so we put an outhouse out there and the picnic tables out there. We did have 2 people stay there before we got the notice, and have done absolutely nothing with it since. It is just a giant field of grass and weeds that we basically don't do anything with. If we have the campground there, it will be all mowed, so fire danger in my eyes would actually go down quite a bit because you make a bigger fire break. There's really zero impact on the road. Anybody that comes down that road that does not live in the county or know the county rules drives down that road at 20 miles an hour and does absolutely no damage to the road. And we do have the outhouse there that can be or will be maintained and pumped by a local company. So we've not, and trash can that we take care of. It's just
It's just a spot for people to stay that are coming through. There are rules put in place with this website also, and they do have an insurance policy within the website. We don't plan on booking anything off the website, so that would cover that part as well. Do you guys have any questions for us?
Any questions for the Coffees? Jason?
Mr. Chairman, applicant copies. road maintenance, have you put any thought into improvements you would make to Imberg Road or maintain Imberg Road if this were approved?
No, not really. I mean, it's a county-maintained road that they have not maintained in the last 3 months at all. But, and again, a car driving down it 3 times, 4 times, doing 20 mile an hour, I mean, is going to do absolutely nothing to that road.
Your access and your kind of your plan of the way you were going to lay this out, I guess I couldn't tell in your application, were you going to make some road improvements here specifically? I mean, if somebody got out there and got stuck, emergency services being able to get in there to get to a potential camper type person, or was there improvements planned for this ground?
There was. I mean, and you can see in the one picture from the gate forward where we had started putting in road base and making sure that there was a good road there. We did stop when we got the notice, but we've added road base and sand into that to ensure that they don't get stuck and they can get in and out. And that would be greatly improved after this is approved.
Includes my questions.
Any more questions for the coffees? Mr. Mitchell?
So I have one, Mr. Chairman. So I guess, so there's going to be 4 campsites and then unlimited RV storage, or is it one RV that's going to be stored there? Or?
No, it's just it's a mobile home that we parked way back in the back and that we just use for storage. It has nothing to do with the campsite itself.
Okay, so there'd just be like one mobile home?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Chad, questions? Robert? I do have a couple questions. When did you get the notice from the county that you need to come see us?
It was right after, was that Memorial Day?
It was in June, yeah.
Yeah, it was very early June.
Another question. So suppose someone, you say it's just for people coming and going through town. What if you have somebody that has a camper or a tent and wants to stay there indefinitely?
No.
What do
We
you
have
have?
a 14-day policy, no longer than 14 days.
Does that mean he can leave one campsite and go to another one?
No,
So 14 days and he has to leave the premises?
yes.
Okay. I notice also no smoking. How do you enforce that? How do you rent somebody a spot and tell him he can't smoke?
Well, it's in there written, and then we are just right across the street. We wouldn't have anybody there if we're not home.
Okay.
We would be able to maintain and watch what's going on.
I guess my concern would be the fire possibility, but I
And-
was just curious.
And we don't allow any sort of fires at all. And I mean, it's stipulated on there in probably 4 or 5 different places that there is no fires.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else for the coffees? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we're going to start the public hearing. I'd like to call a public hearing for consideration of Conditional Use Permit 21-004, and that is for this 4-spot camping area and mobile home storage on Inberg Road. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the application, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak in favor? All right. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward. One at a time, though. Let's start, I waved at both, well, both of you kind of raised your hand at the same time, so I'll let you arm wrestle. Hello,
Hello,
could we have your name and address, please?
my name is Vicki Smith, 12574 Enberg Road. I did print out some of the stuff off the planning website, so I kind of speak a little bit intelligently. I'll lead off with the camping during the eclipse. It was an absolute fiasco. Hundreds of people and campers. We spent 3 days keeping trespassers off of our property. We spent 3 days convincing people that they could not drive through the lock gate because their GPS told them to. Convincing people that they were not allowed to drive up on the irrigation ditch or go swimming or fishing in the irrigation ditch, that they could not come onto our property and pet our horses or go pet the deer. At least we don't have buffalo, so we didn't have to worry about that. On the guidelines for review, it said that, the owner has to have the application. They did not fill out an application until neighbors called the planning commission. And then they came and got the application. As far as an overburdening to county services, I would welcome any of you to drive down our road. Don't bring your sports car. It is minimally maintained. We already have a family that drives 50-plus miles an hour up and down our road and passes you in the road ditch and has made a huge mess out of a lot of things. So if people are hauling in campers, fifth wheels, et cetera, it's just going to make it worse. We have several areas on that road where there's no gravel or road base left. And just like the rain we had last weekend, we had about 1.5 inches out there, and you leave in four-wheel drive. You're not getting through some of those spots in a regular two-wheel drive vehicle. The traffic, that kind of thing is a huge concern. Again, the trespass issues are a huge concern. The thing that scares me the most is fire. He says they can't have fires, but if people have campers with generators, it's hot outside. They're not going to sit in their camper when it's 95 degrees outside and not run that air conditioner. That generator's running. You saw from the pictures what that property looks like. It's nothing but cheatgrass and weeds. Those generator exhaust pipes get hot. It takes one spark. It takes a considerable amount of time for the fire department to get to that area. And by the time they get there, depending on which way the wind's going, my place may be gone, my neighbor's place may be gone. And that's not why we moved out there. We didn't move out there to have strangers running around. It does say on their website that they can hike right there. The thing on here said that they, quote, couldn't leave the property. But it says hiking right from the property. So, you can't keep them off the public road, of course. But, again, I can see people coming on, oh, your horse is really pretty. Can I go pet him? I've never pet a horse before. No, you can't. Another thing that it states on the application instructions, and that they need the names and mailing addresses of all the adjacent property owners. Now, if you guys received that, I'm not sure where they got all that information, because none of us were informed about this. None of us. Either this or the eclipse fiasco. So I would really, really hope that you would consider denial of this and we can keep our nice, peaceful country neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. One moment, please. We'll give the board here a chance to ask questions if we have any. Any questions for Ms. Smith? Jason?
Ms. Smith, where's your property in relation to this application?
Mine is clear at the end of Enberg West,
Okay,
on the right.
thank you.
So we are at the end of the dead end, and we kind of turned into a little bit of a racetrack, especially during the eclipse, because people were flipping around and doing a U-turn and going back down. And
Thank you.
Any other questions?
One question.
Chad?
Is there, at the end of Inberg Road, is there enough room to turn around a camper of any sort?
If they get into our driveway and our neighbor's driveway.
So no.
But no, they cannot stay on the public road, and past our place is the irrigation district road. And that's a dead end,
Right.
literally into someone else's pasture. So no, you cannot turn a vehicle around on that road.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you.
Next. Hello.
Hi, my name's Pat Butler. I live on Haynes Road, which is the next road up north of the Engberg Road, but my property borders Ms. Smith's property, and I lease my property out for cattle grazing. And the area out there is rural, agricultural. It is not designed to be a trailer park. And there's a one down on the 10-mile road, just off the highway. They have put extensive electric and all kinds of stuff in there. And in the entire time that they have had that little camping area, there have been 2 campers. And they spent one night and left. I mean, there was no place to turn around in that place, and it's not much different than what this place here is, except this is more overgrown. But the thing that I'm getting at is when you let something like this in, all it does is degrade everybody else's property, because you're stuck with all these people, transient people, in and out, in and out, in and out. And I have seen the Engberg Road. I have been out there 40 years, and I have seen that Engberg Road impassable in the winter. And there are a lot of times in the summer when we do have a lot of rain that it is impassable. And you cannot tell me that everyone on that road drives 20 miles an hour. On my road, they do not drive 20 miles an hour. And we're lucky if they drive 50 because they think once they turn off of the highway, it's a straight shot down that road, you know. Well, Engberg has one little curve, you can just see it, which is more pronounced in actual life than it is on that picture. And that has been an issue in the winter. That's where it plugs up. And you cannot get out sometimes in the winter. So I don't know, if they don't have sewer, they don't have water, these people are going to be creating a problem. And I just don't think our area out there needs this, even if it's only 4 hookups. It needs to stay agricultural. If they are worried about the grass on their place, put some cows on it, put a couple of horses on it, pasture rent. You'd be surprised what people pay to pasture their horses. And it's a whole lot less money than trying to put a road into that place, which, number one, the ground out there is not always great ground. There's a lot of alkali. And in order to keep a road base, it takes a lot of work. It took me 40 years to finally keep my driveway graveled. So, good luck. But no, I do not approve of it, and nobody out there that I know of approves of it. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Questions from Ms. Butler? Thank you very much. Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to this application, please come forward. Hello.
Hello. I am Robin Martin. I'm at 12300 Ingberg Road, directly across from this campground. So mine and my husband's concerns are the wear and tear on the road, because as you've heard, we already have people that drive 60, 70 miles an hour down the road. It's not maintained regularly. I'm sure that the county doesn't have the funds to regularly maintain it. Another concern was the sanitation, because there is no running water. They do have a porta potty over there, it looks like, and a trash can. But I walk our property 2-3 times a year, picking up all the trash that blows onto our property. So that's a concern as well, is additional trash. And the additional noise and traffic, because we're directly across from it. So it directly impacts us on that. Also, insurance on the property, if they're gonna have insurance and be bonded in case that the campers cause any damage to other people's properties. Is that gonna be something that they do also? And then how is it gonna affect the property value also? I don't think it would improve property value out there. That's all I have.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Martin? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Please. Got a couple of you guys, I see you. Hello.
Hello, we are Rick and Lisa Keith. We have 12175 Enberg Road. There is one property between ours and this property. We are 2 properties to the east. I agree with what these other ladies had said, and we are definitely against this. Our road cannot take any more travel than it what already has. Also, we have our daughter, and she likes to ride her horse down that road. Traffic coming up and down the road is not a good deal with horses riding up, and we're not the only ones that like to ride the horses up and down that road, so. And back to the Eclipse deal, that road was horrible for 2 days. You couldn't hardly pull out of our property for traffic going up and down it. In fact, I almost think it was the first time I ever saw the sheriff's deputy on our road before. It was so bad out there, so. And Mr. Coffey's idea of 20 miles an hour and my idea of 20 miles an hour are way off, because they don't drive 20 miles an hour on our road. It does say when you come onto our road, there's a 20 mile an hour sign. It is not adhered to, that is for certain. Right, well, I think it was a couple days ago, you had to drive 4-wheel drive to get down that road after the rain. You're going to put campers behind trucks on that road in the mud, and you're going to have a lot of problem. Noise level we're concerned about, we're fairly close. During the eclipse, it was extremely noisy over there. And we don't want that noise. We moved to the country because of the noise. We don't want it out there. And when you go to the country, it's because it's quiet and peaceful, nobody around. And that's not, it may, it's a for use now. What is it, 2 or 3 years from now when they decide to go more and more? That's just to getting your foot in the door with a 4-spot. And so that's our concerns. Traffic, road, like I said, no sewer, no sanitation out there. And noise levels, crime, with people comes crime and trespassing. And, we don't lock anything up. I don't want to I had to do that in town. I don't want to have to do that out there. You got anything you'd like to say?
Well, we're all Wyomingites, so we all know that what we believe in, and if somebody strange comes on our property, it's going to be, it'd be like calling the police, and it's going to be issue after issue after issue, and it's going to be continuous until it's stopped. So with the people that were here for the eclipse, granted, that was a huge, big thing, 400 people. That's a lot of people on that piece of property. And we felt it for even a few days after it was over, because they were still fixing, cleaning up, people leaving. But the garbage, the stench was just horrid. It was just awful. And I'm thinking porta potties, anything like that, that's just, Wyoming, it blows. And when it blows, it always seems to blow towards us and we smell it. So it's like,
Yeah, it blows right to our property.
it blows right to us. And that's the other concern, we were talking about fires. Depending upon which way the wind blows, that would get into our property very quickly. And we have animals, we have property that we would like to live in. So that's just kind of my take on it.
Any questions for us?
Questions for the Keiths? Thank you.
Thank you.
There was at least one more. Good evening.
Hi. My name is Caitlin Heyer. Well, actually, it's Sorensen now. Sorry about that. I'm here on behalf of my parents, Christopher and Sarah Heyer. They are at 11747 Enberg Road. They are in quarantine at the moment, or they would be here themselves to speak in opposition to this. My mom is on a phone call with me to listen in on this. So if at some point she has something to say, I'll unmute her. So far, they have said that they are in agreement with everyone else on the opposition. The noise, the smell, they're worried about the crime and vandalism that could come from this. They have a shop at the very front of their property and then a garage and a barn on their property that are not locked. They have been broken into before. There's broken windows and such, and they are just worried about having to get a storage unit for their belongings if this were to pass. What else? And then again, the speed that people go down the road, like they are flying. My parents, their parcel is just the second one in. It is the first house on the road to the south of Enberg. So absolutely everyone passes. People turn around in their driveway. They have like a little roundabout at the front. And it's just a hassle. It's super unkept. And then we also have horses. We like to ride them. Sometimes we ride down the road. We're worried about the speed that they're going. People are not paying attention always. Things like that. My mom also said that she didn't move out there to look at basically a trailer park of campers. They moved out there to be away from the noise, away from the people, where they could have a home that they feel safe to have their grandchildren on. They do not feel safe with a lot of people around. The grandkids would not be able to have free roam of the area as they do now. I'm gonna unmute my mom and see if she has anything to add.
Nope, I think that pretty much sums it up. We are definitely worried about the speed as well as the additional individuals that are going to be in that area. There's no way that you can really police that, and it's such a long ways out of town. By the time you get the fire department out there and the police out there to help mitigate situations, and the view portion of it, and we moved out here for peace and quiet. We did not move out here to have a trailer park in our view. Yeah, we are definitely in opposition of this, and we support the others that are in opposition. And the way that they handled these solar eclipse does not bode well for future activity. So I'm saying no to this, please. Thank you.
All right, questions for Ms. Sorensen? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to the application? No one else? So we will declare the public hearing closed. Discussion, the chair would be looking for a motion to approve or deny. And keeping in mind that we do have a staff recommendation to deny the application. Actually, one more thing. Should give the applicant a chance for rebuttal. So if you guys would like to come up and address some of these things that you've heard from those that are speaking in opposition, now would be your chance to come up and fill us in on things maybe we should know that we don't.
I guess the first thing that I would like to say would be that the speed limit on Ingberg Road is 55 miles an hour. And
Okay.
I can give any one of them the number to County Road and Bridge, and they will verify that. It's a unmarked dirt road in the county of, or in Natrona County, and it states that any unmarked dirt road is 55 mile an hour.
Okay. Anything else?
Do you have anything?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, any discussion? And again, looking for a motion.
Can I ask just a couple questions of our attorney?
Absolutely.
So can you go over the campground controversy? Because I remember we've talked about that before. And because I guess my question is, have campgrounds been permitted that aren't operated by the Natrona County? And are there any other campgrounds in that area? Is there any kind of common law or any kind of past precedent that we could base this on?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
There have been campgrounds, I think historically, that have been permitted within the county. Where we really ran into a definitional problem with this is where the proposal was not to be used for commercial purposes, but just for family and friends, and whether that fit the definition of a campground. I think this is more akin to a campground. It's certainly not owned by Natrona County, and that's a problem. But I think if we're looking at similar incompatible uses and trying to analogize what's being proposed, I think, a campground would be the appropriate way to look at it. So again, it's not ideal the way the resolution is put together. I think that during the zoning rewrite, we'll be looking at that. But I think that it would be appropriate to view it through that lens here today.
Any other questions? Board would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move denial of a campground application based upon staff's findings of fact. Included with that, I would add that it would be a change of character to the neighborhood and an overburdening of county services on Ingberg Road. Oh, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I need to add. I would also move the approval then of the mobile home as a storage unit. It seemed like there was two lines in here, and I don't think staff was necessarily denying the mobile home as a storage.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Gutierrez, that's correct. The request to allow the mobile home for storage use was added to the conditional use permit. So really, I guess there's technically two requests under one CUP, and that would be one, the campground, and then two, the use of that for storage.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion, but I also got a question. I think you're only allowed to have so many unlicensed vehicles on your property in the county, is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Zeal, that generally is correct. When you start getting into unlicensed and inoperable vehicles, it gets a little bit convoluted and not knowing the specific situation, but I think as a general proposition, you're correct. There are some limits on that.
So would all these trailers need to be licensed?
So again, I'm not exactly sure. Are we talking about the campers that would be brought into
Camper that would be stored there.
Oh, that's stored there? off the top of my head, I mean, that's really something that I would look to our code enforcement officers. I'm not, off the top of my head, I don't know if a camper would constitute a vehicle. I mean, I think it's probably defined differently, but that would be something we would have to look into.
Sure, come on.
Again, there was zero plans to have anything stored there other than the one trailer house. We weren't planning on having camper storage or anything like that.
Thank you. All right, gentlemen, we have a motion and a second. Two-part motion. The first is for denial of the camping component of the application, and the second is for approval of the mobile home storage. So let's do these one at a time. Or actually, one in this, let's do them separately. It gets confusing. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion for denial of the camping component of the application. Motion and a second. So this is to call the question. All in favor of denial of conditional use permit 21-004 with respect to the camping, the 4 campsites, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the application for the camping, according to the Planning and Zoning Commission, those 4 sites is denied. That's going to be our recommendation to the to the Board of County Commissioners. The second part of that application is for the application to approve mobile home storage at the location on the property. Any discussion on that detail? Mr. Mitchell?
My understanding it's a single mobile home that's going to be stored there. Because I think that just has to be specified that it's for a single mobile home and not for mobile home storage.
I read that somewhere.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that the application had the handwritten addition. Please add the mobile home storage to my CUP. Home is 26 by 40 to be used as storage.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. So that, to me, so that's one mobile home. Okay? Any further discussion? All in favor of the application for the single mobile home storage on the property signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
So raise your hand if you were, make sure I got it right. Raise your hand if you were for approval. 3, and we had 1. And I would move for approval as well. So the count was 4 for and 1 against. All right. Thank you. Our recommendation will be forwarded to the Natrona County Commissioners, and Mr. Nelson, I understand that's on, even with I guess it would be our recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, and then it will be on the September
7th agenda, I believe. That's
September
correct.
7th agenda here in this same room.
Correct.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Next on the agenda, consideration of PS 21-004, and that's approval of Jaffer Industrial Park lots 7 and 8. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. This is an application submitted by EC Enterprises, LLC. The applicant wishes to divide parcel into 2 lots, making half-acre parcels for future commercial utilization. Current zoning is light industrial. Upon approval of the parcel division, both lots would be connected to Wardwell Water and Sewer. Here on this map, you can see outlined in the purple the parcel to be divided into 2 lots. As you can tell, it's zone light industrial. And here it shows the subject property in context to the surrounding area. It looks like it's just west of the Salt Creek Highway. Loaf and Jug is depicted there as a landmark. So the pink-purple outline shows the current parcel, and the yellow shows the proposed division of that parcel into 2 separate parcels. Here's a picture from the middle of the north side of the lot facing south. Facing southeast. Facing west. And the middle of the north side of the lot facing north. So criteria for approval. Staff believes that the subdivision complies with the development plan and the zoning resolution. Should this be approved, each lot will meet the minimum lot size requirement of a ½ acre with access to both public water and public sewer. This subdivision follows the Natrona County subdivision regulations. The subdivision location is located within an inactive improvement and service district. And as you'll see later on in tonight's meeting, there's a staff proposal to make a text amendment to remove that as a requirement. Notice was sent to 9 surrounding property owners, and to date, no comments have been received by staff. Staff would recommend a motion of approval of the Jaffer Industrial Park, the division of the parcel into 2 ½ acre lots to create a commercial subdivision. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any questions.
Questions for Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, I just got one. So is that currently 1 acre and it's going to be 2 ½ acre lots? Is that the way I read that?
That's my understanding.
Awful small. That's all I got.
Any other
Yes,
questions?
that is correct.
A quick question. And I meant to look this up, but I didn't. Why would a simple subdivision lot split not apply here? Why does it have to come to planning and zoning?
Mr. Chairman, that's a good question. I thought the same thing myself, and I'm not seeing anything in the packet immediately that would answer that for me. So I unfortunately would have to, I'd have to defer on that.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Mr. Chairman, I believe the reason why this lot split is a major subdivision is because it's part of a prior subdivided subdivision. So if you've been part of a major you were part of a subdivision once, and then you want to split an existing lot in half, then that second bite out of the apple then is a major subdivision rather than a simple subdivision.
Okay.
So that's why it has come through the process.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to speculate that was the case or something
I
similar.
wondered if that
but-
was the case, but it seems
Yep.
like a trivial type thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Would the applicant like to come up and tell us about what his or her application amounts to?
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Hello.
My name's Eric Grinstead. We purchased property on Jaffer. Currently, we use it for storage. It was owned by a friend of mine and gave me the opportunity to purchase it based upon someone else had expressed some interest for it. And I expressed also the same interest for it. That being said, I opted to purchase said property, mostly to keep my stuff that's currently there without having to move it. I have a construction company. I have concrete foundation forms. tractors, trailers, and of such, and works out great for me. It's a great location. But I've also got a friend of mine that would also like to buy the other half.
Okay.
I don't need the whole thing. My new concrete guy would like to purchase the other half of it, and I'd like to keep the other half.
Okay.
That's all I have.
I didn't catch your last name.
Grinstead, sir.
Grinstead, okay.
Yes, sir.
Any questions for Mr. Grinstead? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
With that, we're going to call a public hearing for consideration of PS 21-004, consideration of Jaffer Industrial Park, Lots 7 and 8. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of, please come forward. Obviously, that would include Mr. Grinstead, I would take it. Just wave at us and we'll understand that. Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak in favor of? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Please come forward. Seeing none, call an end to the public hearing. Have any discussion, and the chair would entertain a motion for approval or denial or anything else. Mr. Mitchell.
I would motion to approve the subdivision of the Jaffer Lot 7 and 8, just PS 21-004, and to accept the reference all findings of fact as set forth and make them part thereof.
I'll second said motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Your application for Jaffer Industrial Park Lot 7 and 8 will be forwarded to the Natrona County Commissioners with a due pass recommendation for September 7th. Thank you. Yes. All right. Next on the agenda, consideration of PS 21-005, and that is approval of the Waterman Major Subdivision. Mr. Nelson, may we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. As you mentioned, this is an application for a major subdivision, PS 21-005, submitted by Mr. Donald Hollinsworth. He is seeking to re-subdivide the Waterman Simple Subdivision into 5 lots instead of 2. It's currently zoned urban ag. So here you can see the proposed property lines. The current exterior boundaries are in kind of the pink purple. You can see internal lines, which I believe depict the proposed further subdivision of the property. So the subject property and all surrounding properties are zoned urban ag. And here's a map, vicinity map showing where the subject property is. This is generally west of the airport, off of Garbett Road. So here's a picture from the center of the property facing north. Here's a picture of the center of the property facing northwest. Here facing south. And here facing east. It's middle of the south side of the property facing north. It shows an irrigation feature there. Another picture from the center of property. So a little bit of the background on the environmental history. The Health Department has done percolation tests on the property. Due to the presence of groundwater and restrictive soils, conventional gravity-fed septic systems would not be permitted by the Health Department on these lots. If this were to be developed, a professional engineered design of an advanced treatment sewage system or a line stabilization pond would be required for wastewater disposal. It's a recommendation from the Health Department that potential buyers of these lots should be informed of the difficulties for septic installation. State Engineer's Office did not have any objections to the granting of this proposal at this time. The subdivision plat indicates that public water is available to the property. Public comment. Staff sent letters to 11 neighboring landowners. 4 neighbors were concerned with road maintenance regarding snow and mud causing issues for current residents, and increased traffic would only exacerbate or increase these issues. 3 neighbors voiced concerns regarding a draw on the water pressure. Proposed findings of fact. Subdivision will consist of lots ranging from 10 to 17 acres. Access with 33-mile road and Garbut Road. The subdivision is, as proposed, is in conformance with the general provisions and subdivision design standards. DEQ Chapter 23 study is currently being conducted. Finding a fact that the subdivision would not harm public health, safety, or welfare, and that an improvement in service district is not required. Staff propose motion is recommendation of approval based on the findings of fact. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd attempt to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Nelson? Jason?
I have a couple. In the file there, was Casper Alcove Irrigation District contacted, and did they have any comments on this subdivision?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Gutierrez, I didn't see in flipping through the file that there was any indication that they were contacted.
And I guess I'd follow that up with two. Did staff reach out to 33-mile water and sewer district about water taps?
Take a quick look here. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Gutierrez, no, I do not see that at least documented here in the file.
I see the applicants here, maybe they.
Yeah, they could potentially answer it, but yeah, I don't see any record of that here.
Further questions for Mr. Nelson?
Thank you.
I have one more, please, sir. So it's noted that the Chapter 23 is, I guess, in the process of being approved. Was it staff's idea that whatever happens here today would be subject to the applicant successfully completing the Chapter 23 paperwork?
So, Mr. Chairman, I would have to imagine that would be the intent. Not familiar with the thought process, but my thought is that if they're in the process of getting that review done, that it would need to be completed prior to any final plat approval.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant for Waterman Major Subdivision like to come up here and visit with us? Hello, sir.
Hello. Sorry, I'm short. My name's Don Hollinsworth.
Would you like to tell us anything that we might need to
Well,
know
I
with
could-
regard to your application?
I could address a couple of Jason's questions. There's no Cade water involved. And what was the other thing you'd asked me? Or
33-mile water and sewer district, how they felt about additional water taps.
I already have the taps.
Taps are in place.
Yes, sir.
And this is, I'm sorry, you said it's not irrigated?
No, Cade's not involved. There's no NRCS or anything on that section.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Hollinsworth. Any other questions?
You already
Chad?
have a tap for each lot?
Taps, yes.
Let's see. I think I had, okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So we'd like to open the public hearing for consideration of PS 21-005, and that's consideration of the Waterman Major Subdivision. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of the application, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the application, in addition to Mr. Hollingsworth, please come forward. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to the application, would you please come forward? You know there's one right there, right?
Okay, I have a question on the sewer part of it.
Could you give us your name again?
Oh,
I
I'm
know I got
sorry.
it back there.
I'm Pat Butler.
Thank you.
I live on the Haynes Road, which is before the Garbett Road. My question is about the sewer part and how, exactly how many houses would be in there? I mean, what's the total number? Because each tap, and I'm well aware of this, each tap is $10,000. And from the tap to the house is the homeowner's cost. I mean, they have to pay for the tap, they also have to pay from the tap to their house. And that's another $10,000. So you're looking at $20,000 per house. But then when you get all this water, you're going to have all this sewer. Now, if it's percolation is bad, which I'm pretty sure it is because I know that area, and they have an open, are you talking an open pond sewage collection? Is that what was said in there? I didn't catch all of it.
Mr. Nelson, would you like to address that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just looking back at the letter from the Casper and Natrona County Health Department. The conclusion was, due to the presence of groundwater and restricted soils, conventional gravity-fed septic systems would not be permitted on these lots. A professional engineer design of an advanced treatment sewage system or a line stabilization pond would be required for wastewater disposal.
Well, I don't know how many houses you're talking about, but it really concerns me when one house would be plenty with that kind of a sewer system. And I'm not all that sure I would want, I don't know how many houses you're talking about, but any more than one would be too many with that kind of a system. So that's all I'm saying. But I don't mind growth. I mean, we've had a lot of growth out there on the 33-mile road ever since we got the water line in, because I moved out there long before there was such a thing. And I just don't see the sewage system as being a viable option. That's my biggest concern. So.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Butler? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Heath Horniker. I'm at 13200 Garbett Road, so it would be further to the west, and I used to live at 12590, which would be almost directly across from the proposed subdivision. I came tonight with several concerns. I actually have a couple of additional ones after listening to some things. The first one is the road. I think the people that lived on Ingberg Road hit many of those issues for us. the maintenance of the roads, the increased traffic of the roads, the safety when we have, whether it's my wife and my kids out walking or whatever it might be. Increased traffic on that road is a concern. Garbett Road is a nice straight stretch for about 2 miles. And I believe the speed limit's 40 miles an hour. I would say that most of us neighbors, except a couple, do a pretty good job of staying under that, but you can tell when there's not a local because it's a straightaway. And I would say speeds in excess of 60 miles an hour sometimes. One of my larger concerns, it's already been discussed, is the soil. The soil out there is terrible. It highlights it in the health department report that it's a clay or a clay loam soil. It's often this time of year, if I dig a fence post hole, I'm fixing fence or I'm fixing corral, that I can dig a 3-foot fence post hole and it fills with water before I have a chance to put the post in the hole. That the water seeps in from the walls, it seeps in from the bottom of the hole, which of course then creates a concern with the septics. One of the concerns that I had tonight that I learned about is the lined sewer ponds. If we have to go with 5 households with lined sewer ponds, what's the smell going to be? I can imagine, and I absolutely hope that we don't go that route, because that is not why any of us in the neighborhood moved out there, was to have lined sewer ponds from 5 new households. The water pressure is a concern. I know there are 5 existing taps, but those taps are existing. To my knowledge, they've never been used. That's a question I have, and so when we turn those 5 taps on immediately on the existing line, what's that going to do to the rest of us along the road's water pressure? The taps are there, but they're not being used, and so the water pressure will go down as soon as they are being utilized. I'm really curious about the DEQ's Chapter 23. It almost feels like we're premature doing this without that finding, because we do have some of the concerns about the poor soils. And there's a tributary to Casper Creek right on the east side of all 5 of these lots that flows directly into Casper Creek. And so what is that going to mean if we have septic? What's that going to mean if we have these exposed lined ponds? To me, that's a concern. And I don't want to be one standing up here talking green, but that is a problem, I think, if we put these 5 households in the neighborhood. To quote Commissioner Gutierrez earlier in the evening, many of us neighbors moved into this neighborhood because of the way it exists, the way it is. There are 9 of us that are along that road. We're looking to add 50% in one snap of the fingers in the amount of neighbors that live there. That will definitely change the character of the neighborhood when we add that many people. And so that's why we're opposed. I'm not opposed to change, somebody trying to improve the situation, but this definitely feels too much, too fast in the current situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horniker. Any questions for Mr. Horniker? Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to the Waterman Major Subdivision, please come forward. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for letting us come up tonight. I am Linda Davis,
Glenn Davis.
and we live just directly east of the proposed subdivision, that Waterman subdivision. And we do have some concerns, very much so. Our biggest one is our water pressure. You do have a letter in there that I did send the Planning Commission about our water pressure. In particular, in 2014, I complained to 33 Mile Road Water District about our water pressure being low, and the only answer I got was, well, we already did a study, so it's too late. And so we had to put a pressure pump on our house, inside the house, just to get enough pressure. Well, this year, we had to replace that same pressure pump. And I do have a letter in there from the plumbing company that did that pressure pump. They cleaned up the gauge, the pressure gauge that comes into the house before the water flow, and they were getting 15 pounds PSI. And that's before our pump. So that's all we're getting out of our water. that we should be getting 35 PSI from the water district. So if we add 5 more people coming in using water, we're not going to have any water pressure. It's going to be down to 0. And if that happens, I'm going directly to the DEQ because the water district is required to provide 35 PSI to our house. So that is the biggest concern. The other one is, like Heath Horniker had mentioned, was the septic. Waterman, I think, or Don Hollingsworth stated something about not getting hold of the irrigation district, but he's been irrigating that 40 acres right next to us, where he's wanting to subdivide. He's been irrigating that for a long time. So the water table there is real high. I don't see how on earth that subdividing into 10-acre lots that they're going to be able to do a septic. There's no way because that water table's too high. And all of you probably, or some of you have experienced or heard about what has happened in Vista West area. That's what happened to them when they started subdividing into smaller acreages and trying to have septics in that area. And that's what happened there. So it's just going to saturate the ground right through our field, that which is actually halfway between us and where Don Hollingsworth has that property, is a natural drainage area. And you start saturating that field with septic, and it goes back into Alcove drainage area. So there are going to be problems with chemicals and stuff being in there. And then the other part is going to be the traffic. Then you have an increase of traffic where people move out there on 10 acres. They're going to be in a trailer, and they're going to be taking kids back and forth. And then you're going to have, each one's going to have 3 dogs that are going to be running around and have junk on their property. So those are other concerns.
Yeah, the county can't keep the road open in the wintertime, so there's 3 or 4 of us out here that got to open the damn thing for everybody. But that's going to come to an end because they just don't do it. And then right now, where he's proposing this here, he's irrigating it right now because all that tailing water is running on my place, and I got alkali over here just coming out of the ground. So as far as I'm concerned, and I didn't move out there to have neighbors.
Well, not that close.
Any questions for the Davises? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Hello, ladies.
Hello, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is April Heggie. This is my mother-in-law, Maureen Conway.
We live at 12120 Garbutt Road.
Yes. I believe our neighbors said most everything that I would say. The only piece that I would add to it is that even though Glenn said he didn't want neighbors, I think he does love me. I'm not opposed to neighbors. I am opposed to people that move to the country so they can store their junk. If you drive out 33 Mile Road, we have a gentleman or someone that lives on that road that has currently been bringing in tires and tubs and refrigerators and just destroying their own property, not to mention all of ours around it. I'm very much opposed to that, thinking that that's what the country is for. It's not a dumping ground. It's a neighborhood, just like any other neighborhood.
So I did, it's not in the package, but I did provide 2 pictures of properties nearby, one on 33 Mile Road that she's speaking about, and one at the very end of Garbutt Road So the one on 33 Mile Road is the one that has all these tires, thousands of tires. And the piece at the end of Garbutt Road has a bunch of, broken down mobile homes and travel trailers, and they are trying to clean it up, but we don't want we don't want new neighbors, like Miss April said, bringing in heaps of junk. And again, we would emphasize the water pressure. We're at the top of the hill, and then the hill goes down and flat to everybody else. Our arena is at the bottom of the hill. We cannot run 2 Rainbird sprinklers at the same time. We don't have a booster pump like the Davises, and that's probably what we're going to have to look into. If a hose is on down at the barn, you don't get pressure at the house. That's our concern.
Questions for Ms. Conway or Ms. Haney? Is it Haney?
Heggie, Heggie.
Heggie. I never would have pronounced that correctly. Any questions for these ladies? Thank you very much. Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak in opposition?
May I ask one more question?
You may.
That property is, at least the square chunk, I'm not sure, I'll ask it to the chairman, it is currently irrigated. What's going to happen with the irrigation water? And somebody asked if Casper Alcove was notified, and their meeting tonight, I talked to a board member last night, and they do not know about it. I'm just curious of where the irrigation water, if those rights are going somewhere else, or if they're going to one of the other neighboring pieces of property. Thank you.
Your question is noted. Thank you. Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak in opposition? See. Hello.
Malik Heggie, 12120 Garbutt Road. Is or will there be a set of covenants or anything like that of what's to be built on the property? And is it possible to get a copy of that?
Mr. Hagee, I would defer to our staff.
Yeah, acting as staff or county attorney in this case. So no, I mean, when you're talking about covenants or that would run with the land, those would be from the private developer. There's no indication in our file that there would be any covenants. So, the type of construction that could take place would be restricted to basically the zoning district and those kind of, regulations with regard to setbacks and stuff like that. But as far as covenants specifically, there are none to my knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hagee. Okay, at this time, be a chance for rebuttal. Mr. Hollinsworth, if you'd like to come up and address us with some of these things you've heard.
Okay, as far as the Casper Alcove District irrigation water goes, I'm at the end of the ditch. And when Tony's pivot goes down, I get flooded out. And that's basically the overflow from too much water for me. There is no allocated water. And sometimes there'll be water there, sometimes not, depending on Tony's up or down and what's going on, but that's basically just the overflow, excuse me, that comes off the ditch because I'm at the bottom of the ditch. As far as the septics go, I'm sure obviously Jason and Hal both know that there's high performance, basically mound type systems. I have a house that's on the 40 or tract above this. It's been there 25 years. I have no trouble. I pump the tank once every 3 years and it's the same. I think and as far as the 33 Mile Road Improvement Commission just served a big study, in fact 2 studies a while back about water pressure. And there now is a booster station in place. That's how they make more taps available. And I think the agreement with 33 Mile Road Improvement is they give you 35 pounds of water pressure at your meter pit, not at your house, at your meter pit. and there is pressure reducing valves in the meter pits. So obviously, if you run too much pipe, when you get to the end, if you run half a mile or 3/4 of a mile, you're not going to have any water pressure without a booster pump. Let me see. And as far as, I think one would have a reasonable expectation when you either purchase a piece of property or that it's zoned urban ag. And what it allows and doesn't allow is fairly specific. As far as lot size, what you can and can't do, I can't really address the fact that there's any minimal home sizes, but if you move into an area that obviously has a minimum lot size of 10 acres, it's probably a pretty good supposition that sometime along the line, somebody's probably going to do something. And on the north side of Garbett Road, there is a lot of houses that are 10-acre tracts. And they have sewer systems and wells just like I do. Everybody out there deals with the same crappy soil. I don't think there's any ideal percolation out there anywhere. But I said, I have a house that's just north of this stuff that I've had no trouble for 25 years, or 20 years anyway. And everything, well, WLC is the one that does all the engineering and stuff for me on this one. And I've talked to Ken Moore, and he said there's no problem. They can definitely design the system so there won't be any unlined sewer ponds or any of that sort of situation. And as far as five taps reducing the water pressure drastically, I guess they could refer that to Barry Vinn's study on 33 model road improvement. But I don't think there was anything else that I needed to talk about. Let's see. And as far as what I planned, there probably wouldn't anything out there, be anything out there less than 2,500 square feet probably, with a minimum of probably a 4-car attached garage and maybe an outbuilding. So, I mean, there's no 20 or 12 by 60 mobile homes planning on coming in, excuse me, but I don't know, do you have any questions for me, or?
Any further questions for Mr. Hollingsworth? Jason?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Hollingworth, so are you indicating that you are going to have some covenants on this property?
Well, I can't address what covenants are in the urban ag. I mean, I'm not an expert on urban ag, but I could certainly put covenants in there. I mean, I have a 2,600 square foot house and a 40 by 88 building and a loaf and shed, and I'm not the slightest bit interested in having a 12 by 50 trailer with a bunch of crap parked on it below my place. I mean, I don't plan on. Hopefully, it'd be a credit to everybody, a credit to the road, but and I can understand the people go out there I guess, to get away from the hustle and bustle. But I don't know, as obviously Garbett Road goes down and turns and goes on out, and there's hundreds of people out there that use that road. So I don't really think that probably another 5 families or whatever is going to stress it too much. And as far as keeping the road open in the winter, I'll be happy to do that because we do it now anyway. I don't know, or I mean, we have a large loader out there and a grader and a backhoe and all kinds of stuff, and if we can't get out, we open the road, so.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, what I just seemed like I heard a number of comments in regards to covenants, and if Mr. Hollingsworth willing to put covenants in place that may address some concerns that the folks have brought up.
Yeah, I have no problem with that whatsoever.
I guess I heard Mr. Hollingsworth, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that you do not plan on having any special covenants other than what the standard Natrona County planning and zoning book
Right, I
has.
said, I'm assuming that whatever covenants are in urban ag, I said, I'm not an expert on the covenants in urban ag. And I don't know, is typically I don't know if I could legally put covenants in there. I don't know, it'd be something I'd be willing to look at. I'm certainly not opposed to it. I mean, I want it to look just as nice as these folks want it to look like. I mean, I have a substantial investment out there, and I certainly don't want to affect my property value by a couple $100,000 because I let somebody bring some crap grader house in and start a junkyard.
I guess in my mind, we're starting to tread on land here that I'm unsure of, and that is whether we can require covenants as a part of a major subdivision application.
Well,
Mr. Attorney?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I mean, when you start talking about covenants or any kind of those types of things, you're talking about, private contractual restrictions on the use of the land. And when the applicant here is talking about covenants in the zoning, I mean, they're really not covenants, they're zoning restrictions. And so, I would agree with your comment that you're we're straddling the line between what the county can regulate and require versus what the owner can do contractually with his own property, so.
And I guess the only thing I would say is obviously nothing is cheap these days. But anybody that can afford to buy one of those lots is not going to start a junkyard or bring a piece of crap in. Because obviously the taps are, the tap fee is 10. Then by the time you buy the meter pit and all the rest of the toys, it's another 2,500. Then it's another couple grand to put it in. So just the water alone is, I mean, it gets expensive fast. So
I think the point's well taken, though, from the folks that have speaking here tonight. There's a lot of apprehension with what might be, and who knows what somebody will show up with.
Well, if somebody can afford to buy one of these lots, they're not going to show up with, I don't think, too much. I mean, I'm a big fan of stick building, but I can't say whatever the county allows. I mean, I'm not any expert on what they allow now, but the county is pretty restrictive on what you can do as far as any type of mobile structures. They inspect them, and they're pretty stiff with that. But and I said, I don't want to take everybody's time, but I said, I don't have any problem putting some kind of restrictions in the deed, and I can do that as far as the minimum size that they can build. And whether it has to be either, there's two distinctions, what they call an IRC and then I guess basically a double wide trailer, and then what they call a modular, which comes in and sets down on a permanent foundation. So, but, if you got any questions or.
Any other questions for Mr. Hollingsworth? Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you, appreciate it.
Did I already close the end of the public hearing? I don't think I did I? Looks like we got another comment. Hello, Mr. Davis.
My hearing's not good, so I want to ask Don. You said you have had a house out there for 25 years, or you lived there for 25 years?
No, I've been here for over 70 years.
Well, I know, but out there, I know it used to belong to Edwards.
Matt Edwards, right.
And he's only been gone for about 14 years.
I was around, what I was associated with was around the corner there.
Okay. Guess that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, anyone else in the audience wishing to come talk to us about Waterman? Calling into the public hearing. Discussion. Mr. Mitchell.
So I guess this is a question for the attorney. So what I heard is like three major issues: is the water pressure, the road traffic, and then the soil. So I guess the pressure that comes out of those taps, is there any guaranteed pressure? Like because I'm trying to look and see, we're not supposed to overburden the resources. I'm trying to figure out if would that be addressed by the DEQ study or how is that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm certainly no kind of expert on that area of the law, and so with regard to what amount of pressure that the water district would have to provide, I couldn't tell you what that specific number is or where that regulation would come from. I think that as the Planning and Zoning Commission, what you can look at is, can adequate water be provided? And so you've heard commentary and testimony with regard to low pressure, and then there's, I think in the packet there's some letters and some correspondence too. So I'm sorry, I can't give you the specifics with regard to the water district, what their obligation is, but I think from your perspective, that's certainly something you can look at in determining whether to recommend approval or denial.
Okay, guys, one more question.
Yes, sir.
So I was trying to figure out what this sentence said. There was that Casper, Natrona County Health Department, and you kind of read that conclusion, then they kind of said subdivision approval requirements are not intended to satisfy any of the specific requirements of a small wastewater system permit. So I was just trying to figure out what that, what that really means, is because it sounds like in order to address these soil issues, they're going to have some type of re-engineered system. And so are they saying that there's no county requirements as to what that small system needs to do?
Mr. Chairman, so yeah, trying to interpret that line myself, I wasn't exactly sure what Ms. Heald was referring to. But what I guess my takeaways from that are that because of the soil type and the groundwater, you know, conventional septic's not going to be utilized. It won't be approved. It's going to have to be some type of, you know, engineered or advanced system, and or potentially a line stabilization pond. There was an additional email that Ms. Heald did send. I don't know if this helps to shed more light on her position, but you know, she said, I've reviewed the documents from the simple subdivision that was completed in 2017 and concluded that additional trenches and percolation would not change the evaluation of the property. The conclusion in 2017 was due to high groundwater and restrictive soils. Conventional septic systems would not be permitted on these properties. And that was in a 2 subdivision, because it's important to remember currently there's 2 and they're looking to increase that to 5. She goes on to say these lots would require professional engineered design of an advanced treatment sewage system or possibly a line stabilization pond. Further subdivision of the larger lot into narrow 10-acre lots will make the installation of a septic system even more of a challenge when factoring in setbacks from property lines. So my takeaway is that you're going to have an advanced system or an open pit, and even if you can find one, because of whatever those setback requirements are, it's going to be a challenge from an engineering standpoint. And beyond that, I'd only be speculating. So I don't know if that sheds any light on the issue for you or not.
Any other questions?
Cool question. I guess I'd like to see some type of report. Most of this saturated ground is from the irrigation leaching over the years. I guess I would like to see somebody report with the irrigation district as to what their plans might be in the future. I mean, they've dried up a lot of ground in the country over the years from pipelines and so on. I guess I'd like to hear what their plan might be. I'm wondering if this should be tabled until then, and along with the water pressure, I'd like to hear something from the 33-mile water district board as to what their plans are. Somebody out there is willing to donate ground for them to put a tank on, and they don't seem to show any interest in it. That would improve their water pressure, just that tank alone.
Any other discussion? Mr. Hollingsworth, would you mind coming up? Got a couple questions I'd like to bounce off of you. Do you know the status of that Chapter 23 report being prepared?
I talked to Ken Moore, and he said they were behind. I thought COVID's got a lot to do with this stuff, but it's in the middle, but they're running behind having it done.
It does occur to me that perhaps this is jumping the gun a little bit with this tonight, not having that information. And, you know, along with Mr. Zeal, it'd be nice to have a letter in the file to say, we got 5 taps, we're going to provide 35 PSI at the tap.
At the meter pit.
And all the 23 that goes along with engineered. And then the plat itself, I think, needs to have something on there that says you have to have a special design for sanitary sewer. You can't just assume a normal septic tank leach field system.
Right, you have to have what's called a mound system.
Yes.
But these lots are 300 feet wide. It's a city block wide. You have to be 50 feet off I mean, it's not like you're gonna have a hard time putting a mound somewhere, a leach field. Use a standard septic, just a mound, and I guess I would say to that everybody that lives out there deals with this. In fact, I probably have a little bit better ground than like there's over on Bishop Haynes where all the alkaline stuff is. So, I mean, there's hundreds of houses out there. They all deal with the same soil types, and it works. I mean, it's not anything that's insurmountable. And But then as far as the 23 goes, I'm sorry, I'll talk to Ken and I can maybe get, I don't know who's working, or who's taking care of business now that Trish is gone.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Hollingsworth, you can contact myself, Eric Nelson. I'm up in the county attorney's office, and
Okay.
we've got some other staff, but I can be the point person on that.
And I could give you an update on the status of the 23, but, see, this started out as a simple subdivision way back when. And then we got into a situation where obviously the water wasn't available because the booster station wasn't in, and, one thing and another, and then it got, rules changed, and now it's a major subdivision, but
Mr.
there's a lot of data from.
One of the reasons for asking you up here is to ask your take if we were to table this tonight. You think we'd have something more to look at and to consider next month or 2 months, or do you have a feel for that?
Well, obviously, the DEQ study is probably the next thing, but as far as, like I said, as far as all the engineering goes and the SILT and the PERC and all that, that's all been done. I started on this thing 10 years ago.
That would have to be included in that Chapter 23 report that we don't have, and I, for one, am uncomfortable.
No, I understand completely. No, you bet. I can get with Eric, and as soon as I get that Chapter 23, we can, if we need to, shelf it for another month or whatever, so be it.
Yeah, so I'm thinking Chapter 23, it'd be nice to have a letter from Casper, Alcove Irrigation District basically stating what you've told us.
Well, I moved the water a long time ago. There's no water, Cade's not involved in any way, shape, or form. The only thing I deal with, there's an old ditch there called the Inberg Ditch that used to catch all that water. Well, everybody quit flooding and put in pivots now, so there's not, but what I'm dealing with is, Cade is talking about doing some pipe now and getting rid of that what they call the lateral I'm on, because I'm at the end of the ditch. So if somebody's pivot goes down, obviously his pump turns off, but the water doesn't. And so I get flooded out. So the water, that's just an overflow on that field. It comes down instead of going down that ditch. So instead of increasing the groundwater, I put it out on the top of it and let it evaporate or let it go down where Bryce can use it or whatever to do with the water.
So in my mind, I got an alarm going off that says, are you allowed to even do that?
Well, absolutely. I can't stop the water.
Okay, but I don't know if it has to be channeled. I don't know if you can use it for irrigation. I don't know.
Well, that's something, obviously, Jason's very familiar with.
So
but-
Casper, Alcove Irrigation District, a letter from them. Things I'm writing down, guys. Jump in if you think I'm wrong. So the sanitary sewer deal is going to be part of the Chapter 23.
Right, so you're wanting a letter from,
So number one,
Cade.
get that Chapter 23 finished.
oh, yeah, no, okay, I got it.
Have a letter from Casper, Alcove Irrigation District addressing your situation with your using, or number one, you're being the end of the line, you're catching the overflow, and number two is the acceptability of you using that excess water for irrigation.
Well, I sand it across the field and right down the ditch. I'm not doing anything with it, but go ahead.
Okay, I think there needs to be something on the plat that specifically says that it's going to require a special engineered sanitary sewer system for each lot.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's on there already, but,
It just says there's no sanitary sewer, no.
okay,
It's
design.
Yeah.
okay.
The next thing, I think we need a letter from 33 Mile Water and Sewer Water District addressing providing acceptable water pressure to the taps, 35 PSI according to, was it Chapter 12 DEQ?
To the meter pit, yeah.
That's all I wrote down. You guys can think of anything else?
Is Road and Bridge in part of this?
I don't remember if I read this letter or not. It's from Hagler. I don't remember.
Mr. Chairman, if the action of the commission is to table it, what I would, I guess, commit to is that staff, we can reach out to Cade and to 33 Mile and to Road and Bridge and take another look and see if there's any other stakeholder agencies that should have been contacted and maybe weren't.
And above all, is that chapter 23 getting that finished?
Yes,
so
sir,
that we-
that's in the works.
So that we know what's going on there. So, Chair would entertain a motion.
I would motion to table this, assuming he's okay with it, which I think is what we have to get, and then to address the issues that have been brought up.
Do we have to have a date specific?
Mr. Chairman, I would prefer it. I mean, you can always, if you picked a date specific, say the September Planning and Zoning meeting, you can always reevaluate it, and if needed, table it again. But I think having a date specific, in my mind, makes sense, and I think is in some instances required without the consent of the applicant.
According to my book, we have the next Planning and Zoning meeting here on September 14th. Would that be acceptable to you to postpone consideration until then?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second to table? Table by Mr. Grant, or second by Mr. Grant for tabling. Anything else, Mr. Hollinsworth?
No, I think if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them if I
Okay.
can. If not, what?
Any further discussion? All in favor of tabling until September 14th signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, sir. All right, last but not least on our agenda tonight is consideration of TA 21-001, and that has to do with amending the text of the 2013 subdivision regulations, I think in this case specifically related to improvement and service districts. Mr. Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. This proposed text amendment, in essence, would remove the requirement that major subdivisions form an improvement and service district to provide for the maintenance of subdivision roads. Back in 2013, I think, although not personally around at the time, the intent was to create this requirement to provide a mechanism for road maintenance in the county. And what we found as a matter of course is that new subdivisions are in fact establishing the improvement and service district, but then promptly not utilizing them. They don't, there are certain requirements that the state insists that must be met on a yearly basis with regard to financial reporting and so forth. And they're just not active and they're not doing that. And so it looks like of the ISDs that have been formed through the years, only 46% are current on these requirements. The other 54% have been dissolved, inactive, or not current with the state requirements. I can tell you, putting on my county attorney hat, that every December I receive a list of non-compliant improvement service districts, and then in January I get a list of improvement service districts that we are asked to initiate dissolution proceedings on, and it tends to be quite a lot of work for staff. So looking at this, what I think has been decided is that, we're trying to solve for the road maintenance problem or the road maintenance issue, and this really wasn't solving that issue. And so the proposal for the text amendment would be to modify the regulations regarding improvement and service districts for subdivisions. And specifically, I'll just read it into the record, Chapter 2, Section 4, page 10, remove all language and add, quote, a subdivision will be required to join or merge with an existing improvement service district if contiguous to the existing ISD boundary, end quote. Chapter 3, Section 2, page 11, delete. Chapter 4, Section 5, 8, page 15, delete. Chapter 4, Section 7D1, page 17, delete sentence. Quote, a new or merged improvement and service district shall be mandatory for all major subdivisions, end quote. And then lastly, major subdivision application form, delete the last sentence on page 50. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
Questions for Mr. Nelson? Jason.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Nelson, so if you're adjacent to an existing ISD, then perhaps you would be forced to join in with that one.
Yeah, that's, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Gutierrez, that does seem to be the intent, and there's, I think, some logic to that because you're contiguous, and it makes sense.
And so if you're in an island, so to speak, and there's not any around you, there's not really any mechanism to take care of the road maintenance. We would just eliminate the ISD at this point and maybe investigate in the future a different way to solve that problem.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. You know, this unfortunately just isn't solving the problem, and it's just creating a lot of administrative hassle and work. And so we have had some discussions internally, and probably will be reaching out to developers and realtors to try to come up with a different approach to encourage road maintenance in the county, because it can be a problem. You know, oftentimes folks look to the county thinking that it's a county-maintained road, and it's not. It may be dedicated to the public, but it's not. And you know, I think what we've learned through experience is that unless the homeowners are willing to voluntarily form it, they're just not going to have that buy-in. And so, unfortunately, this is kind of where we're at.
Mr. Zeal.
I just need some clarification. An improvement service district, are people taxed for that to maintain the roads in? Is that part of their property tax?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Zeal, that is correct. So when an improvement service district is formed, and they become basically a separate political or governmental body, and a board is elected, and they have the ability to assess either, you know, a specific dollar amount or something every year that is then collected as part of their property taxes, turned over to the improvement service district to be utilized for, you know, road maintenance, improvements, can be used for water improvements, those types of things.
So does the county enforce that for those people, or they just like wash their hands of it?
So with regard to the collection, if it's a ISD in good standing and they're collecting those taxes, then if they're not paid, then that property will go to tax sale. So that's the enforcement mechanism on the collection. Right. You know, I run into issues where people they don't understand the requirements and they want to comply, or they can't get enough people on the board. And so I end up acting as a county attorney trying to help them through that process. But you know, we've got a number of areas where there's improvement service districts, so they just can't find 3 people to step up and serve on the board. And so then technically they're non-compliant. So it's a challenge.
Seems like a lot of these places, no work gets done, no road maintenance, stuff like that.
Right, that's the problem. I mean, then there's no mechanism to do that. Now, the county does have an ISD kind of a matching program. So if you have a improvement service district, the county will match up to 50% up to $25,000 a year for road maintenance or other costs. So that's kind of that's the carrot. We're trying to get folks to step up and do this, but it still hasn't been super utilized.
Any other questions? I do have a couple questions. So this ISD thing, I understand it doesn't work. I understand it, and I can put myself empathize being, if there's 5 people and I'm on a 3-person board and I have to go tell my neighbor to essentially pay taxes.
Right.
So I don't want to be on that board. You know, I can understand that. But the bottom line is, and we've heard from it here tonight, these roads can be just absolutely atrocious. And if nobody's taking care of it, nobody's taking care of it. I mean, you lose cars in those things.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, that 2013 thing was about the time we had the folks up in Antelope Hills call the newspaper and go out there and look at how bad the situation was. And, you know, the newspaper gets all excited about the situation, but the county says that's not our problem and nothing gets done. So I guess I, for one, would like maybe a survey of what other counties are doing in Wyoming to encourage road maintenance, private road maintenance, something. I mean, we can't just say ISD didn't work, so we're back to where we started. We don't have, you know, the county's putting that $25,000 up seemed like it would help, but I mean, these folks we're talking about tonight up there at Garbett Road and Enberg Road, those are actually pretty good roads compared to what you see out there where there's no county involvement. I mean, they're just right out there by the old Mountain View School. There's some biggest holes out there that you've ever seen.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think your point's well taken, and probably doing a survey of other counties and how they're addressing it. On the flip side, we did have a light shown on us at a joint legislative interim committee meeting because of the high number of non-compliant ISDs in Natrona County. When I had contacted the State Department of Revenue a few years back, and I said, look, we require these as part of our subdivision regulations. They said, well, then don't dissolve any of these. So we just kind of let them ride, even though they're non-compliant. Well, it caught the eye of some legislators, and I got a call from Jeremiah Riemann from Waco wanting an explanation, and he had to testify in front of them because they were looking at changing the state statutes just because of what they were seeing going on here. So it became apparent that we just couldn't sit by, and so we've actually begun to initiate dissolution proceedings on a number of these. And the public policy, I guess, behind that is that if you're taxing and collecting this money, but then you're not compliant with reporting, it's kind of where's this money going? But a lot of these we see, that we force them to establish, they never have an election, so there's never a board, there's never one assessment ever made. They just sit inactive from day one and do nothing. So there's got to be a better way, but this just
And when you
doesn't
think
seem
about
to be
health and
working.
safety too, I mean, if these roads, it's just an inconvenience. If you live out there or have property, you got to get to your animals or whatever. But if there's an emergency and you can't get to it because of whatever, an unmaintained road, then that is a real emergency. So.
Agreed.
All right. Any other discussion on this? I guess we have to,
Yeah, we need
the
Motion.
the chair would entertain a motion considering amending the text of the 2013 subdivision regulations concerning improvement in service districts.
I move to proceed with TA 21-001 to amend the text of the 2013 subdivision regulations.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm still confused, but it's getting clearer.
None opposed, so the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission, Mr. Nelson, is to do away with the improvement in service district as written. All right, any further business, public comment? There goes our public right there. See you guys. No public comment, right? Okay, thank you. All right, Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd so move.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.